Joining myself and Norris at our studio at Techtown, Ariel Knight, game developer of We Never Yield. Welcome to Daily Detroit. I'm glad you're here.
What up? What up? Thank
Hey.
you for asking me. This is dope. I like it. Y'all got me out of my cave, so congratulations.
Well, listen, we know you're in the middle of a launch. We Never Yield is now out. I just bought it on Steam myself. Very excited to get back and hop into it. But, I want to talk to you not just about We Never Yield, but also your journey as a game developer. But for all those who don't know, talk a little bit about We Never Yield, what it's about, what kind of game it is.
Okay, so I like you said, I go by Ariel Knight, Detroit's hardest working game dev.
Facts.
And I created this game a couple years ago called Ariel Knight's Never Yield, which was like a single person, some like to call it a runner type game, but it was a little bit more than that. We had some spice, some soundtrack stuff. So, we mixed it up, and people liked it a lot. People liked it so much, in fact, that we got to make a sequel to follow up on the game. There's a story and like cutscenes and all this stuff, and I ended the game on a bit of a cliffhanger, so I can follow up with this one, which we call We Never Yield. And the reason it's called We Never Yield is you control two characters at the exact same time, but you can also share the controller with a friend, and it turns into a co-op game.
Yeah, and for those who kind of don't really understand the game development process, I mean, you've done majority of this work on both games by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Majority. I won't say all, but majority. I mean, it comes from your mind, your design aesthetic, and it's your baby. So talk to us a little bit about, what led you into game development, and definitely what led you into trying it on your own.
Yeah, so the first game was just me on my own. I was working two jobs out of my grandma's house. I was kind of like in the attic with like a $300 laptop. And I had, worked on people's games before and did all these things. And I really wanted to, I was giving up on the game industry. It's really hard to find a job or opportunities in the game industry for anyone, not just a black person, but being black in the game industry adds a whole nother level of like difficulties and things like that. So yeah, I created the game, the first game, and it went well. People like gravitated towards it. I got put in the Indie World Showcase. I get like a lot of eyes on me. We got a publisher and things like that. Me and my boy Dan, who helped me out with the music. And it, like I said before, it became a little bit popular. We got to make a sequel. And with the sequel, the story of the first game was me working on my own, just trying to create this thing out of my mind. And the sequel was more about me working with a team. So imagine what I did with nothing, no team, no money. Now I have a small budget and a very small team, but look what we created with just that. And now imagine what we can do if we actually had even more support. And we base this game in Detroit. The characters are from Detroit, all black voice cast. What happens if people that we're trying to represent actually back the game and say, hey, we want more stuff like this. What could we do next? Like, just kind of the possibilities are endless. So that's why I'm out here trying to like let people know what's going on, trying to get this, get some support to see where we can actually kind of like use that, where we can go from there.
And another thing that I love about this, you mentioned the voice cast. A lot of the folks who voice the game, like I've run into and met, in my endeavors as a games journalist. And I think one of the things that I love and I want to see more of, and I want to ask you about is, like you said, you set the game in Detroit. Your characters are all from here. Representation is like such a huge, I would say, buzzword in creative communities, and yet we don't necessarily see as many folks just saying, well, F it, I'm gonna do it myself. Everybody is still sort of dependent on latching on the other larger projects and then injecting that inclusion into it. What was it like approaching, the music, the musical artists and the voice actors and all that, and telling them about the project, getting them excited about it? What was that process like?
It was weird, man, because, I was like kind of pitching it to people before I even really knew it was going to actually happen. I remember going up to Blessing, who voices the main character, Wally. And we were just in the middle of a party, and I was like just in his ear, I was like, yo, it's gonna be dope. And at the end of the game, this is gonna happen. And like this happens. And he was like, okay, whatever. But like that's just how he is. But then I was telling Black Crystal about it. Way I found her was that she was streaming the game, and she was just so hype about it, and she was like just so into it. And I saw that she did voice acting things, and I kind of reached out to her and said, "Hey, would you be interested in it?" And she was just down. She was just like, "Yo, I just wanted a project like this. There's something to do," and it was just amazing working with these people. And it just kind of happened randomly. And like as I would find people that I really wanted to work with, who were excited about the first game, because that was really important to me. I didn't want to just hire somebody who was just like just treating it as a job. They had to care about what I was trying to do. And that's kind of like how I went about kind of picking people and like finding people.
Yeah, and I think that's just I'm very inspired hearing about all this because as somebody who has been a gamer my entire life and has found inroads into the industry in other ways, not on the development side, but as a media person, um, seeing more of us get involved because for as you know, we play a lot of video games. It's not like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like, we're any different than anybody else. And so kind of approaching it and looking at the culture, particularly the culture of a black man from Detroit, what were some of the things that were important for you to include in the game or bring to your development process that you were just like, nah, I can't make this game without this, or I can't make this game without doing this?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It was just like, I was writing the script. It was my first time writing a script. So I think getting feedback, getting other people to look at it, like, the script has some antagonists and some things happen in the story, which I wasn't sure about. It involves like black women. And I was like, yo, I need to ask them, about it, before I kind of just put it in there. So I think that was a big factor, is like I wanted to get a lot of outside opinions, which I've worked alone so long that it's really weird for me to go to people and be like, hey, look at this, tell me what I did wrong, and I'm gonna make changes. So I think that was the kind of biggest like thing for me, to kind of make sure I include it. But also, like, this story takes place outside of Detroit, but I wanted to include as much as Detroit in it as I could, because it's a fantasy story about two characters from Detroit getting thrown into this like kind of fantasy realm world, and that they're originally from, and then trying to make their way back, which I feel like is like it's a fantasy story, but it's like the story of a lot of people from Detroit. Of you, when you grow up in Detroit, you want to get out, right? And then when you get out, you want to come back. It is like like I remember being in Texas and just kind of being a fish out of water and not having any friends and that whole culture shock and all that stuff. And the whole time, I just wanted to get back to Detroit, where I was comfortable. And that's kind of what kind of inspired that story, and like where I kind of drew it from.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And just, I want to ask this about you, in your personal life. You know, I love hearing that because, I'm somebody who never left. And a lot of people ask me that question, why didn't you move here and move there and do this and do that? And I am starting to see a lot of people come back. And it's very interesting to hear that from you. I want to ask for sure about something that you do online that a lot of even indie developers do not do, which is you put out copious amounts of videos about your development process, especially as you got closer to the launch of We Never Yield. It felt like almost every day there was a new video out. Here's what we changing. Here's the patch notes. Here's the updates that we're making to the game to make it a better experience for you. Um, what went into doing those videos? Because again, game developers don't, not indies. You see a lot of the larger companies do it, but a lot of indie developers have they don't share as much as you share. What went into that process?
Yeah, I mean, they probably right not to, because you kind of open yourself up for a lot of criticism. Me, I just don't care. I just kind of do whatever I do. People like it or they don't, but I try to be real transparent and let people like know like who's making this thing, because a lot of times I think the disconnect is in gaming is that we don't know who the people are who make these games, right? Like I was doing a talk, which I never do. I never do talks. I hate talks, but I do it like a panel or whatever. And I stopped the panel because like somebody said something, and I stopped the panel and I was like, I asked the crowd, I was like, hey, who's your favorite video game character? Just pick something. And people started shouting out names and whatnot. And I was like, name the person who created that character. Right. And it was just quiet. You got the Kojimas sometimes or whatnot, but I'm like, name one person on Kojima's team. Because Kojima out here taking flights, you know,
Right.
hanging with famous people.
Hey, I'm a big fan of Yohi Shinkawa, who he collaborates with.
Okay, you aside, you smart,
aside,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
But also I think it's important to share that founder story. Like I even realize this with our project sometimes. People think, oh, you've been here for a while. It's like nearly 1,500 episodes, all these things. The first version of this website was coded in like the backstage of a bar and too many whiskeys in, you know, years ago. There was no major funder. There was no, like, this is like a homegrown thing that evolved into what it is today. But I think so many people assume when you have a quality product, when you have something that's good and pretty cool, like what you've done, people assume, well, of course it had to be a big thing, you know?
And you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
You can, or at least get the foundations down for yourself. So We Never Yield out now. Where can people find it?
You could pick up. Sorry, you threw that at me real.
My bad.
Right, you got to alley oop. All right, so Ariel Nights We Never Yield. It's on a lot of platforms, not all platforms. It's on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, both Steam and Epic Game Store.
All right, We Never Yield is out. Ariel Knight, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Oh, thank you.
This will not be
appreciate
the last time we have you here, because I would just love to have you on anytime we have something gaming related. But thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming in.
no problem. I'm right down the street. Just hit me up. You know.